After losing all of his memories, he was saved by a girl who entered a dangerous tower which was only accessible to those with special abilities known as regulars. He, however, forces his way through the gates and decides to take on all the challenges of the tower, which promises the status of God to whoever climbs it, just so he can meet the love of his life once again. Bam was just a boy when he suddenly woke up inside of a fallen rock cluster. Unable to get out, he starts hitting the fallen rocks in hopes of getting out somehow. Thankfully, a girl named Rachel happened to be in the area, and she helps him get out as he witnesses land for the first time in his memory. She asks him whether he was okay, and then tells him all about the world they live in, and how it is completely underground. According to her, there is a special tower known as the Tower of God, and whoever climbs to the top of it will be granted any of their wishes, and the only thing that she wants to wish for is to see stars that are supposed to be up in the sky, which they have never seen before. They grow together, and one day she ends up running away just like my dad did, as she was called by the tower to get some milk, I guess. Bam chases her and is able to tackle her down. But the tower still summons her from right in front of him, and she disappears after saying a final goodbye. Bam screams for the gods to give her back when suddenly he is able to force the gates of the towers open and enters it. He meets a weird creature, who is supposed to be the navigator in the area named Hedden. He tells Bam that he is one of the only irregulars that were able to force their way inside of this tower. He immediately asks Hedden whether he has seen Rachel, but Hedden stops him and tells him that all of his answers could be found on top of the tower. Hedden looks at him and asks whether he would like to take the test to climb the tower, as that's the only way he can see Rachel once again. And without a second, though, Bam agrees. Suddenly, a cage appears behind him, and inside of the cage, he witnesses a huge monster, covered in indestructible scales, swimming around in the air. Hedden tells Bam that the rules are simple, as if he can go inside of the cage and break the black ball inside, while not getting killed by the monster, he wins. He tells Bam that if he wants to leave the test, now is the time, as once inside, he cannot leave again. Bam, however, doesn't even listen to his complete sentence and rushes off to enter the cage, surprising Hedden. Before he can enter the cage, however, a girl jumps up and kicks him in the face, stopping him in his tracks. She shouts at him in a language that he cannot understand, and soon a white-haired boy runs behind her and talks to her in a foreign language before taking out a white ball, which transforms into some magical energy, which surrounds Bam and then disappears. Suddenly, Bam can now understand what they are saying. They introduce themselves as Yuri, a princess, and Even, her assistant. She asks him whether he is the irregular that forced the gates open and entered the tower. But before he can reply, she simply looks at him and calls him weak, and tells him that she wouldn't have cared if he dies to the monster inside. But this is unfair. She looks at Hedden and asks him why is he giving Bam such an unfair test, as even the regulars on the 20th floor cannot defeat this monster. She looks at Bam and tells him that he looks cute, so she asks Hedden if he can reduce the level of the test. Hedden obviously declines, as he doesn't give anyone the pretty privilege, and even Bam thanks Yuri for her concern, but tells her that he wants to do it, as this is the only way he can get back the thing that he cared about the most in his life. Hedden looks at Yuri and tells her that if she wants to help him so badly, she can give him one of her legendary weapons, as that will reveal whether he is any good or not. Even advises her against it, but Yuri immediately takes out a sleek black sword and hands it over to Bam, who thanks her for the sword and promises that he will return it once he passes the test. He enters the cage and stands in front of the monster, breathing hard because of the fear, as the monster rises up in the sky and lunges towards him. Yuri can't believe her eyes and shouts at him to dodge out of the way and tries to run inside to help him, but she is stopped by Hedden, who tells her that she can't help him anymore. The monster rushes up to him and with one swift attack gobbles Bam up and closes its jaws shut forever. Yuri gets angry and tells Hedden to move out of the way, as he shouldn't have let him die, but Even stops her, telling her that Bam chose the right strategy and tells her to look at the monster. He tells her that the only way to kill the monster is to let it eat them, and then stab it from the inside. The monster immediately starts going crazy, and to everyone's surprise, it pukes Bam out while falling back to the ground, unconscious. Yuri screams at Evans for not telling Bam this strategy before, but he replies that even if people know about this strategy, most of them are too afraid to let the monster swallow him. So he thought that Bam, being an irregular, can never do it. Bam starts moving towards the black ball and stabs it with the sword. To his surprise, however, the ball doesn't break. This even surprises both Yuri and Evan, who have no idea why the ball didn't break. He keeps stabbing it again and again while screaming on top of his lungs, which wakes the monster up, and it starts coming towards Bam again. Evan and Yuri both scream at him to run away and save his life, but he stands his ground and shouts at the sword to lend its strength to him, and suddenly a bright light surrounds the entire arena, pushing the monster back as a beautiful woman emerges, surrounded by a bright golden light. She asks Bam whether he wants to climb up to the top of this tower to become a god, but he replies that he isn't interested in that, and the only thing that he wants is his love, Rachel, to come back to him. The woman smiles and hugs Bam, telling him that she will lend him her strength this one time, which surprises Yuri because she never lent her strength to her, the actual owner of the weapon, but the woman simply replies that she doesn't swing that way and likes men more. The black ball ends up breaking, and before the monster could attack him, he vanishes from the area, passing the test and ascending up the tower. He wakes up some time later in an empty wheat field covered in yellow. Suddenly, a voice speaks through a queue, welcoming all of the new contestants to the tower and telling them that as of now, there are 400 players present and their first task is to fight amongst themselves, so that only 200 players are remaining on this level, which will lead them to advance to the next level. This scares Bam, who quickly scurries off to find his blade, and after grabbing it, he starts crawling through the field to avoid being spotted, but a giant man finds him on the ground and starts chasing him. He swings his giant sword at Bam, but he dodges again and again before finally falling over as the man puts his feet on Bam's chest and tells him to make his peace with death. But just before he could bring his sword down on him, he gets shot by a bunch of arrows straight in the chest, falling down on the ground without another word. Bam spots an archer on a hilltop, now aiming for him, but before he can shoot Bam, the archer gets headshotted by a sniper on the other side of the hill, giving Bam the opportunity to run away. He starts running away as the sniper takes aim, but is killed by a different monster. He also spots a white-haired boy with a briefcase who gets attacked by a four-armed creature, but he blocks the attack with his bag before grabbing his sword and killing the creature. He keeps running, but finally comes face to face with a blob-like monster and decides to take a stand on his wobbly knees, getting his sword ready. He psychs himself up for the fight, but the white-haired boy approaches him and tells him that his knees are shaking, which will make his sword strike basically useless. Bam immediately turns his sword towards the white-haired boy when suddenly he tells Bam that there is another opponent nearby, which turns out to be a giant lizard man with a spear in his hands. The lizardman immediately uses his spear to attack Bam, but stops at the last possible moment, telling him to surrender. Bam is confused when suddenly the blue-haired boy comes up behind him and says that they might earn a lot of money by selling a talking lizard, but Bam gets scared and runs away from both of them. The lizard man gets mad at them for calling him a lizard and introduces himself as a rak, the feigned hunter, whose sole goal is to find the strongest prey and to test his strength against them. He tells the blue-haired boy to back off as he is going to hunt Rak, because he believes Bam has a very strong weapon, which can be possessed by only strong people. He tells them that he is going to hunt Bam no matter what, but the blue boy tells him not to act like a barbarian like everyone else, who are killing each other just because of voice to hold them to. Rak gets mad at him and tries to attack with his spear, but it is dodged completely by the boy, who jumps up in the air and lands behind him before bidding them farewell as he walks away from the situation. He tells Bam that he is going to find some strong and interesting people so that he can ally himself with them for further rounds. Rak turns towards Bam again, but before he can attack, the blue boy trips Rak down before grabbing Bam's hand and hiding behind the blob monster, while Rak gets up and runs towards the field thinking they are hiding in the bushes. Looking at Bam's confused face, the blue boy tells him that these blob monsters are pretty harmless and don't like attacking anyone. The blue boy introduces himself as Kun and brings Bam close to ask him about the sword that he has, as it should belong to the princess of the tower and not some random irregular. Bam reveals that he borrowed it from her during the test, but was unable to return it to her. He walks off and Bam follows him while players are fighting each other and bringing down the number of people in this level rapidly. Rak keeps trying to find Bam and simply throws anyone who tries to attack him away. Bam and Kun both sit behind a rock while he reveals through his balls that only 268 people are remaining on this level and that it should be over soon if they stay hidden. He asked Bam whether he has killed anyone before, but he replies that as far as his memories go, he hasn't killed anyone, but before he was saved by Rachel, he has no idea what he did. Kun extends his hand and asks whether he would like to form an alliance with him, as he is not as mindless as the other players who are still fighting each other to try and increase their chances of winning. Bam shakes his hand, but just then Rak arrives once again behind them and tries to attack him, but Kun immediately blocks the attack with his bag as the announcer reveals that only a couple of minutes are left for the round to end, but the player count has already reached 200, so they have passed the round, but they can still kill each other if they want for the remaining time. However, by the end of it, they need to find 2 players each as allies, otherwise they will be disqualified from the match immediately. Kun looks at the timer and tells Bam that they don't have enough time, so they might have to ally themselves with Rak. He, however, doesn't give the lizards shit and attacks them once again. They both dodge and back off before running away. Kun shouts at Rak that if they don't find allies they will lose, but Rak replies that he doesn't ally himself with his prey. This finally angers Kun, and he turns around, revealing a dagger, telling him that he will kill Rak and find a different ally. Before they can begin fighting, however, Bam comes in between and tells them to chill out. He asks Rak why he wants to hunt him, and Rak replies that he wants to fight opponents with strong weapons, so that even he can grow stronger. Bam tells him that he is ready to fight, and just before the fight begins, he throws away his sword, telling Rak to attack him. Rak, however, gets mad and tells him to get his sword back, but he refuses and keeps walking towards Rak. Kun gets in between again after having a look at the timer and tries to manipulate Rak by saying that if they become allies, they will pass this round, and then on the next level, he can find even stronger opponents. But Rak doesn't listen and attacks him with his spear, throwing him away. Kun runs towards Rak and jumps on top of him while the 10-second countdown begins. Bam also starts running towards him while Rak decides to use his spear to attack him, but he dodges and climbs on top of him, passing this round as well. They all appear on a different floor where 120 people have passed, and they stand around in groups of 3 while Rak shouts at Bam to fight him. Kun again tries to manipulate him by saying that he should let Bam live for now and fight again when he is even stronger. He succeeds this time, as even Rak is tired and hungry at this point, so he gives him a chocolate bar, which he really likes, and asks for more. 2 people on the other side of the floor start fighting amongst themselves, when suddenly a tall blonde man arrives and tells them that fighting is prohibited here. He introduces himself as Lero, the administrator of this test, which shocks everyone as it means that he is one of the people who climbed to the very top of the tower and is now known as the Rankers, or the strongest beings alive. The players stop fighting immediately as he looks around the floor and comments that a lot of people seem to have survived this time and that he needs to reduce the number of players. He immediately creates some water in his hands and floods the place, pushing all of the players away from him before creating a very dense wall of water in between him and the players, claiming that anyone who is able to cross through the dense wall will be qualified for the next level, and since they are in the teams of 3, if even a single member of their team fails to cross the wall, all of them will be disqualified. To everyone's surprise, however, Bam ended up the only person who didn't get swept away by the flow of water, and he tells the administrator that he will go to the other side as well, but Lero stops him, telling him that his luck saved him, so he has already passed. All the players start testing the walls and trying to push through it, while Lero tells Bam that to pass time, they should play a betting game and bet which player will pass through the walls first. They end up picking up the same player at the same time, which leads to a draw, but Lero tells Bam that even getting a draw against a ranker is a very big thing, so he will answer any one question that he has. Bam immediately asks him whether he has seen Rachel, but Lero shakes his head, claiming that he doesn't know anyone like that. Slowly, some people start crossing the wall, while Kun tells Rak to stay back and just observe what the others are doing. Suddenly, one of the guys with the sniper starts shouting at Lero, calling him a cheater for putting such a barrier, and starts insulting him. Lero walks past the wall and up to him while the gunman points the gun at his head. Suddenly, Lero creates a bunch of water around him and pushes it onto the gunman, claiming that on the 30th floor of this tower, the air pressure is like this constantly, so if he can't live through this, he can never survive further on. He stops, however, while the gunman pleads and begs for mercy as Lero walks back. Finally, both Rak and Kun start walking, and Rak passes through the water wall first without any issues, followed by Kun, who passes through without a problem, but the end of his bag gets stuck for a second. Lero looks at Bam and tells him to be careful of Kun, before saying goodbye and walking off. They all ascend further and are waiting outside the arena that they all have to go in. It has a timer of 10 minutes, and in between they hear a bunch of screams which denote that the team that went inside has lost the game, whereas if the team wins the game, the next team is called forward immediately. They all sit and wait in front of the entrance, waiting for their chance to come, as Kun notes that it has been more than 5 minutes since the last team went in, and as expected, they heard a loud scream, and the next team was called. Suddenly, a balloon man walks up to them and tells them that he knows a clue about the game, and he would love to share it with them. Bam is naive, so he immediately thanks him and asks him for the clue, but Kun is much more clever and tells the balloon man to piss off, as he knows no one will simply tell them such an important clue for no reason. The balloon man declares that he is the smartest man among all of the players, and he has deduced that the actual time limit to play the game is only 5 minutes, as any team who spend more than 5 minutes inside have lost the game, whereas teams that went to the next level always cross this level by 5 minutes. Bam thanks him, but Kun tells him to hold his thanks, as he suspects the balloon man is simply using them to test out his theory, so that he doesn't have to do it himself. The balloon man gets pissed and tells him that his cynical nature might be why his family doesn't like him, which triggers Kun, as he launches on top of him with his knife drawn out, but stops at the last second thanks to Bam. He hops off the balloon man and tells him to run away before he kills him. By that time, the woman in the bee costume tells them to go inside as it is their turn now, and they enter the arena. The inside is all black, and in the center, a guy wearing a kimono is sitting making tea. He tells them that this round is very easy, as all they have to do is open the right door from the 12 available doors within 10 minutes, and they will win the game. This shocks all of them as Kun asks for more clues, but the man simply sips his tea and tells him that he doesn't have any more clues for them. Kun starts over analyzing things, worried about what the balloon man said and whether he should trust him or not. It was almost about to be 5 minutes when Rak kicks open one of the doors, and it turns out to be the right one. Kun is in shock and asks Rak why did he open the door, and he replies that he opened it instinctually and didn't think much about it. Kun turns towards the man in the kimono and asks him what this test was about, and he replies that the test was about decisiveness, and regardless of which door they chose, if they opened it within 5 minutes, they would have won, but after 5 minutes, it would have been a sure loss. This way, they ascend to the next level, where they wait for the new game when Bam goes over to a vending machine to get something to drink, but doesn't know how to operate it. Suddenly, a man named Shibi approaches him and gets him and the rest of his team some drinks while talking to Bam and striking a friendship, as both of them are the weakest in their teams and much more normal compared to them. Suddenly, Lero arrives at the floor and walks up to the contestants before telling them that he has good news for them, as they have the opportunity to take part in a very special game. The choice to enter the game would be totally voluntary, and it wouldn't affect any teams negatively if they didn't take part. However, whoever wins the game will be given the opportunity to directly climb the tower without any games. This is huge news for everyone, and almost everyone seems to want to participate. They all enter a huge arena where Lero explains that this game will basically be a capture the flag time game mode. There will be a 5-second countdown where teams can decide whether they want to take part in the game. Whichever team gets the crown, they will have to make one of their team members sit on the throne, while the other two will defend them from the other teams. Whichever team stays till the last will win the game. The game starts, and obviously the careful and calculative Kun told them to chill out and not to participate in this round, so they have a better idea of how to play this game. Shibi's team enters the arena, and they are against only one team this time. A lizard girl from Shibi's team tells Shibi and the samurai boy that she will take the enemy team alone, and not to interrupt her. She walks up to the enemies and tells them to try their best, even though it wouldn't matter. One of the guys tries to walk up to her, but she simply throws him away before converting her sword into a whip and throws him into a wall. Another guy tries to attack her, but she whips him in the face, tossing him in the air before whipping him back and forth a couple of times. The final guy runs up to her from behind and plants a punch on her head, but she doesn't even move, while the guy screams out in pain because it felt like he hit a rock, and she kicks him away. The guy who got whipped in the face runs up to her once again, but this time he dodges her attack before telling his teammates to get the crown. The lizard girl, however, is insanely fast and arrives on top of the throne before using her whip in a circular motion to create a huge gust of wind, throwing everyone away. She then nonchalantly grabs the crown and puts it on her head, while Shiba tells her that she should have given it to him, as he is the weakest. Lero announces the round's end and tells everyone that the next round is about to start. Shibi tells the lizard girl, whose name is Anna, to come down the throne and to give him the crown instead, as he isn't as strong. But she refuses, and even Lero tells them that once someone wears the crown, it can't take it off, as that would result in disqualification. This really worries Shibi, but Hats, the samurai guy, tells him to chill out, as they can defend this crown very easily. Lero initiates the countdown once again, and Rak, as expected, gets up to join the game, but Kun stops him and tells him that they are not going to join in this round as well. Before Rak could have done anything, the timer runs out and two teams enter the ring. One team contains 3 guys, and the other one contains a dagger-wielding girl, a demon girl, and a sleeping beauty. 2 of the 3 guys attack Hats with their swords, while he throws one of his swords in the air and uses the other one to blow the wing-headed guy back, while clashing with the boy with a knife. Hats is way too strong and almost breaks through the boy's knife, but the wing-headed guy tries to attack him back, only for him to almost get hit by the sword that Hats threw earlier. They all fall back into formation, while Hats tells all of them to come at him at once. The 4-eyed guy looks at him and tells him to get ready for his Inferno punch, while he envelops his entire arm in flames. Shibi, on the other hand, is somehow able to stand his ground against the 2 women. He kicks the dagger girl away, and when the demon tries to kick him, he simply grabs her and slams her to the ground. The dagger girl tries to attack him once again, but he blocks her attack and punches her straight in the face. Even though Shibi is winning, he is still scared by the sleeping beauty, who is wrapped in his blanket and sleeping while his two teammates are in a fight. The dagger girl takes advantage of this momentary distraction and rushes up to him, but Shibi is able to dodge her attack only to be grabbed by the demon, which gives the dagger girl an opportunity to stab Shibi as he closes his eyes. Thankfully, however, Hats reaches at the last moment and blocks her attack, disarming her as he has already defeated the team of 3 men who attacked him. Shibi thanks him, but he tells him that the match is not over and that they need to defend Anna. Suddenly, however, the Sleeping Beauty wakes up and creates a very powerful water blast and shoots it towards the throne, while Hats screams at Anna to wake up and to dodge the attack. Anna dodges the attack at the very last moment, but is immediately attacked by the 2 girls. She dodges their attacks as well, while the Sleeping Beauty uses another massive water blast, which again is dodged cleanly. The attack on her makes her really angry, and she takes out her weapon, and without leaving the throne, uses it to attack the Sleeping Beauty with an unbelievable force. The guy simply wraps himself in his blanket and starts flying away, trying to dodge her attacks, while she increases the intensity of her attacks, and her whip grows a bunch of other heads and start attacking everyone in the enemy team. Kun tells Rack that this doesn't seem to be fair, as Anna is clearly using a very strong weapon. Bam's voice interrupts them, however, as they turn back to see him struggling to keep his sword in place as it tries to escape his hands. Anna was about to kill him when suddenly Bam's sword breaks through the cloth wraps and reveals itself, while Anna's weapon also reacts to the sword. She stops her attack and focuses on Bam, while the dagger girl grabs both the demon and the Sleeping Beauty and rush inside their waiting room, getting disqualified from the competition. Suddenly, the gates to Bam's waiting room is blown open, and Anna enters it with the crown still on her head. She looks at Bam and tells him to give her the sword he has, as he is not worthy of that weapon. Shibi grabs her from behind and shouts at her for leaving the throne, as they are now disqualified, but she tells him that the sword is more important, as it is a very strong legendary weapon, just like her own, which is only given to the princesses of the tower, revealing that she is also one of the princesses, just like Yuri. She tells Bam to calmly hand the sword over, but he refuses, which makes Anna raise her weapon to strike, but is stopped by Lero, who tells her to back off as she is already disqualified. They return to their rooms while Kunt tells them that now is the time to strike, and as the next round begins, their team enters the arena alongside 3 other teams. All 3 of the other teams send one of their members to steal the crown, but they are all stopped by a massive air blast. And when the dust settles, they spot Kun standing on the throne with the crown in his hands. Instead of wearing it, however, he puts it inside of his bag and tells the enemies to take it from him if they want. The rubber monster attacks him, but he is able to use his sword to defend before blocking the water woman's attack with his bag and dodging away from the chipmunk, before throwing the crown out in the arena, telling them to fight over it, while he comfortably sits on the throne. An all-out brawl breaks out while everyone tries to one-up each other and get to the crown quicker, and get so engaged with the crown on the ground that they forget about Bam's team. Suddenly, Kun laughs, and they all turn around to see that he has made Bam sit on the throne and puts the real crown on his head, making the others realize that they have been fighting over a fake. Kun laughs at them and then produces hundreds of similar-looking crowns from his bag and dumps them all in front of them before making them disappear in thin air, mocking them all. Shupi realizes that Kun's bag seems to be pretty special, as he was able to immediately create an exact copy of the crown just by putting it in it, and he can produce countless such copies, making it hard for the opponents to know whether they are being tricked or not. All of the enemies start fuming at this disrespect and decide to take revenge by targeting Kun first and eliminating him from the game. They all jump together to attack Kun, as he casually sits on the throne besides Bam, but before he could be attacked, Rack jumps in front of them and blocks all of them at once using his spear, and throws them back before throwing his spear past them at such an insane speed that it knocks all of them to the ground just by the sheer force of wind, as the spear gets embedded in the wall behind them, ending the round. Lero announces the round's end while Rack sits down eating his chocolates given by Kun, and Bam then realizes that he has been using his bag to make copies of the chocolate for Rack. He tells Kun that a bag that copies stuff is pretty cool, but Kun takes slight offense at this and tells him that it is one of the functions that this bag can do. Rack looks at him and asks why did he show off his bag for no reason, as the opponents were very weak, but Kun replies that he simply wanted Anna to know that she cannot underestimate them. Lero announces the start to the next round, and 3 more teams enter the arena, while Rack laughs at them, saying that it will take more than 3 teams to defeat them. Rack gets ready to fight, but Kun tells him to stay where he is, as they have to conserve as much energy as possible, because the next round is going to be the last one, where the strongest opponents will arrive. He simply plops down on the throne and lays down on Bam, while Rack is standing there in disbelief. Suddenly, one of the enemies speaks up and tells the other teams that they should make a temporary alliance to bring down Kun and his team, and then they can fight for the crown. This scares Bam, who asks Kun whether he heard what they just said, but Kun tells him to calm down, and suddenly, one of the Mohawk guys drop kicks a KKK member, and while his teammate tries to stop him, she gets grabbed by a different monster with spaghetti in his mouth, who pulls her up in the air and then drops her to the ground unconscious. One of the guys gets really scared by this and backs off into a little girl, who does some weird magic on him and knocks him out cold immediately. Bam looks surprised and asks Kun whether he knew this would happen, and he replies that he did, as he is the one who orchestrated it. The rest of the team attacks the Mohawk guy, who blocks and dodges the attacks of the red-haired guy before punching him in the stomach. The red-haired guy unleashes a flurry of punches, but the Mohawk dude simply dodges them all before kicking him in the face. Kun tells Bam that during the first round he ended up finding some people who were scared of the game, and he ended up befriending them and putting them in his bag, so that he can save them from dying in this round. He ended up carrying them through the other rounds as well, and before they entered the arena, he released them and instructed them to help him in this round by defeating the rest of the teams. Rak seems to be mad at Kun for ruining his fights, but Kun gives him some chocolates, which makes him happy for the time being. The Mohawk guy is able to easily defeat the red-haired dude, while the spaghetti mouth and the little girl deal with their enemies with surprising ease as well. After the enemies are all defeated, the trio simply moves back into their waiting room, leaving the arena. Laro announces that the enemies have been defeated or surrendered, so Bam's team is still winning, and the final round starts now. All the rest of the 4 teams enter the arena and get ready to fight, while Rak claims that he can feel the presence of some pretty strong players this round. Kun looks around and spots one hooded team, which he has not seen before, and hence knows nothing about their abilities or how strong they are, which worries him a little bit. Laro announces that this will be the last round and the game begins. As soon as the game starts, a woman in black spandex uniform with a staff in her hands attacks one of the teams, knocking the red-haired, spiky-haired dude out with a single hit, before kicking the huge blob monster in the face and then hitting him on the head with her staff. Finally, she chases the last nerdy guy down and knocks him out as well, arousing the suspicion of everyone else that claims that even this woman is on Kun's side and trying to make them win. One of the other teams decide to get rid of this BDSM freak first and attack her all at once, but is of no use as she deals with them effortlessly, reducing the total team count in the arena to only 3 instead of 5. Kun feels uneasy, so he tells Rak to get ready, and immediately the spandex woman runs up to him and tries to attack, but Rak is able to block her blows with his spear and tries to attack, but she rushes back and escapes his grasp. He chases her and tries to land an attack, but she barely dodges it before jumping up in the air and hitting him on the head. Without losing another second, she jumps straight at Bam to remove him from the fight, but one of the hooded girls jumps up in the air with her red sword and blocks the attacks before kicking her away. Kun is pretty confused by all this, but before he could do anything, he is attacked by a black-haired pump with 2 swords. The other guy in their team challenges Rak to a fist fight, and obviously he agrees, throwing down his spear, while Bam is left all alone. Suddenly, another hooded girl walks close to the throne, but whispers below her breath that they are not here to steal the crown for him, and that he has nothing to worry about. Bam immediately recognizes this voice to be Rachel's and calls her out, while the players around him are engaged in their own battles. He tries to go near her, but suddenly, the final huge hooded guy blocks his path, and he simply sits back down while Rak engages in a punching battle with his opponent. Kun blocks all the attacks of the dual sword punk before jumping in the air and throwing a bunch of knives at him, which end up hurting his shoulders. Rak also ends up grabbing his opponent's throat and throws him into the wall. He looks at the red sword girl fighting against the spandex woman and asks Kun whether he bribed these players as well, but Kun tells him that he did nothing. Kun gets attacked by the sword guy, but he blocks his attack with a bag, releasing a bunch of knives, and when the enemy is distracted, he goes behind him and slashes his back, ending the fight. The red sword girl keeps attacking the spandex woman, while Bam calls out to Rachel once again, hoping she would listen, but there are no replies, and only the sound of the red sword girl kicking the spandex woman is audible. Suddenly, however, while backing off, her heel breaks and she trips, which the spandex woman takes advantage of and rushes past her, and the big hooded brute, jumping up in the air, ready to attack Bam, when she changes targets and ends up attacking Rachel, who tries to dodge the attacks, but ends up getting hit on the head by her staff. Bam immediately springs into action and lunges towards her, dropping his crown to try and save her, and covers her body, getting hit by the staff on the head instead. He falls down alongside her, while his head starts bleeding and vows that he has to save Rachel anyhow, and as the spandex woman is going to land the killing blow, suddenly a golden light surrounds him, and it explodes in the air, shocking everyone around. The light vanishes and the spandex woman drops down to the floor with half of her mask cut off and her face bleeding, while Bam raises his sword to deliver the killing blow, but is stopped by the woman inside her sword, who emerges and tells him that he has lost control over himself. The time stays still as she comes in front of him and puts a magic spell before kissing him on the cheek, which releases the time, and he falls over to the ground unconscious. The test ends up without any winner, because Bam's powers end up destroying the entire crown, which leads to everyone's loss. All of the players were so exhausted that they were given a 3-day break before the next test starts. Rak practices his spear skills, while Kun sits by Bam, who is unconscious on a hospital bed. Suddenly, Rachel arrives at the door and asks Kun whether she could see Bam, and asks Kun for a favor, which totally shocks him to the core.